Um, okay, Mo, I got some
right.
good news for us.
Yeah, what do you got?
We are live.
Oh, damn.
The powers that be were amenable to our offering, it seems.
Lovely.
Hi, and welcome to tonight's episode of a Rabbi and a blank walk into a Zoom meeting. Tonight is a rabbi and a psychoanalyst walk into a Zoom meeting, and I'm so deeply. How much longer do we have to wear these?
Oh, we can take them off now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tonight, I'm so deeply privileged, overjoyed to be here with my dear friend, Rabbi Dr. Moshe Novakoff, a licensed clinical social worker, working in New York. But I imagine you're in so much as you're out of state right now. You're taking your meetings virtually. Is that?
Yeah. Doing all the meetings virtually.
So we're gonna schmooze, and you're welcome to send in comments and questions in the comment feature, which we promise to give about 10% of our attention to.
You're welcome to troll the conversation. No problem.
In whatever fashion your soul so is drawn towards.
We can take anything you got, or mostly anything you got. No promises.
Moshe, l'chaim, first and foremost.
L'chaim. To you, my friend. Thank you for having me. Amen.
Moshe, what is psychoanalysis?
Psychoanalysis is a psychology that was developed by Sigmund Freud in the early, or I should say in the late 19th century. And for all practical purposes, I think psychoanalysis is often described as the deepest of the depth psychologies, the depth psychology that endeavors to go into one's past, sort of like Freud used the language of an archaeologist, sort of like an archaeologist would go into a site and excavate. Yeah, I think that's the lay answer.
What's the not lay answer?
Oh, it'll bore you.
It sounds like a psychological excavation into one's mind, into one's past.
Yeah, and psychoanalysis is particularly interested in unconscious motivations. So, there's your manifest content, there's what you think you know and what you endeavor to know. And then there's what is unknown to you and unknown to the analyst. And in contemporary times, ideally a partnership is formed between the analyst and the analysand in an effort to do that excavating, in an effort to mine and try to understand what the unconscious thoughts, wishes, feelings, motivations of the patient might be.
Why does that matter?
Why does it matter?
Yeah, like that's that's the stuff that they're not bringing to the room, that we're not bringing, right?
Well, consciously bringing to the room.
Consciously bringing it to the room.
Yeah. So the idea is that if we really want to understand what's in the room, we'll endeavor to do that work, right? There's what we think is in the room, and then there's the question of what can we discover in the room.
It's so hard for me to play devil's advocate to this because I'm a chassid of and in my own psychoanalysis myself, but I'm going to try and play a little bit more of the skeptic or cynic with your permission.
Okay. Yeah, can I play it with you?
All right.
Let's tear it apart, man.
That
Let's
sounds like a load of crock, man. It just sounds like a load. Like, what do you mean there is to discover? I come with my baggage, the baggage that's known to me, and you make me feel better.
I make you feel better. Oh.
Isn't that what I pay you to do?
Oh yeah, but how do I do that?
How do you do that? That's the question. How do you do that?
Well, if we're gonna rain on psychoanalysis' parade, let's do it well.
Okay.
Traditionally speaking, a Freudian analysis is a hierarchical structure that's created where the all-knowing analyst bestows knowledge onto the analysand. Sort of like you're saying, you come, you pay, and my job is to bestow some sense of knowledge or understanding or meaning to you, and then you walk out the door and supposedly go and live your life in a better, more fulfilled fashion. Contemporary analysis is not about that at all. Contemporary analysis is much more of an egalitarian structure. So if we're going to rain, if we're going to rain on psychoanalysis' parade, I think we have to say, look at all of these imbalanced relationships, relationships where the analyst thinks he knows and can bestow upon to the lowly analysand. That would be the biggest, that would be the biggest challenge to psychoanalysis, right? And that's why contemporary psychoanalysis comes around to correct that imbalance.
It just feels laborious even talking about it.
Everything I just said just sounds like a big pain in the ass. I know.
But this is how you make your living.
This is how I make my living. Yeah.
It's also what I think what fuels, like, you believe in the work too.
Definitely. What fuels me and what helps me to make my living and to live a meaningful life is trying to create meaningful relationships with my patients. That, I think, is the mutative effect, the true mutative effect of any relational dynamic, is when two people can endeavor to create a world of understanding between themselves, a unique world of understanding, the unique idiom that can be created between two people.
I think I get what you're saying in the way that, like, because I think I've seen this dynamic in play before, like when the president of the United States speaks to the press.
Yeah. You're talking about a relationship of mutual understanding, right?
That's the first one that comes to mind.
100%. Or okay. when number 45 talks to anybody, right?
Right. Fair enough.
True mutual understanding.
Right. Mutual understanding. I wonder about that, because, like, I wonder how much what was the word that you were using for, there's the analyst and then there's the what?
The analysand.
The analysand.
Yeah, the other guy in the room.
The other guy, like, how much does that other guy actually want it to be egalitarian? Like, how much does that other guy actually want to know what's going on for their analyst versus sort of needing to feel like, I don't know.
Needing to feel like they're in the presence of somebody they can idealize?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there is that element, and some patients need that more than others.
Yeah.
But I think ideally, patient and analyst can work through an idealization, can eventually work through an idealization towards a more egalitarian position.
Yeah.
The old Freudians, they didn't give a shit about that.
Yeah.
They wanted to maintain the idealization. They wanted to maintain the aura, the awe
Yeah.
that the patient would have for the therapist.
Yeah. No, listen, we have that in the rabbinate too. We definitely have.
No, you're kidding me. You're kidding me.
Yeah. Fine.
Behind. You
Yeah.
mean people want to idealize you guys?
I think there's a certain type of like, romanticizing of the rabbinate. The rabbi is on, or expected or wanted to be on, a certain type of pedestal in terms of their own ethical or religious or personal behaviors, and
That's a lot of pressure.
it can be a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It can be a lot of pressure. I mean, it's
I imagine sometimes you just probably want to throw in the towel and just be like, look, I'm one of you guys, you know.
I talk about this with my Catholic buddies, because when we talk about like what it is to heed the call and to go into a life of service.
Yeah.
Any schlub can become a rabbi, right? In our tradition.
Tell me about it.
You study for maybe you go to a subpar rabbinical school, maybe you don't, but you study the text. It's not the same type of in the way that like my Catholic brothers do, of complete like utter devotional, almost like subservient service to the church. We'll go wherever you send us, so yeah, rabbis are of flesh and blood, like the rest of us.
Interesting.
I'm remembering my Purim idea. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was your which one? I'm trying.
Fair enough.
I'm cycling through all the different Purims we've shared together.
Next Purim, please God, if once we'll be able to gather together again in person. I thought about it for this past year, and I was counseled away from it, but I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a public psychoanalysis session between a psychoanalyst and the patient? I think you actually cautioned me against that.
I probably did, yeah. I think you should be the patient.
I should be the patient.
Yeah, I think you should be the patient.
All right.
Yeah,
because it's vulnerable.
And I think the audience or the rest of the participants there, should be the audience, and they should really get to know all of your unconscious thoughts, feelings, desires, motivations,
like the dark side of the force.
Yeah, they'll really know you, and then they'll really have a choice.
Yeah.
They'll be able to choose to really be with the real you, or they can leave.
Yeah. That's some vulnerable stuff.
Yeah.
So what's your work looking like these days?
Well, it takes front and center on the computer. Unfortunately, it's something.
But why unfortunately? Sorry to interrupt, but.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate because I really believe in the power of being in the same room with another person and really being able to be with all the senses that one has. The body is not very present in a teletherapy.
Yeah.
It becomes very intellectual.
Do you do FaceTime with your patients, or is it just the voice?
I do FaceTime with all of them.
Yeah.
Or some version of FaceTime where I'm looking at another person.
Yeah. So it's just but you're saying even then it becomes like even when you're seeing their face, there's something about this holding the screen there that makes it more of an intellectual. What does that mean? It becomes more intellectualized.
It becomes more cognitive.
As opposed to
a more somatic experience.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell what's going on with somebody
behind a
when
screen.
You're looking at them behind a screen. Yeah.
Right. Like I don't know if you're wearing pants right now.
I'm not.
Right.
I don't know if you're wearing pants either.
I'm not.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. But is it really true though? Like you might not know if I'm wearing pants or you're wearing pants, but if a patient has shut off, whatever noise
Mhm.
that usually surrounds them and if they say, I'm going to be present for these 45 minutes I have, isn't there potential there for emotive, connection?
Sure, 100%, 100%. And I think everybody understands right now that this is what we have to deal with.
Right.
Nobody's making a choice to have it this way.
Yeah.
One of the participants, it's not like therapist is saying, I don't want to be in the office, and patients saying, I want to be in the office. Neither of us are choosing it to be this way.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of understanding around that dynamic.
That seems same. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry if my questions aren't, more of the gotcha nature.
No.
Hi. Moshe, in preparation for today, we were sending some quotes back and forth to each other.
Yeah.
And you sent me one that I've been thinking about. Do you mind if I
Great.
read to the?
I think you should.
All right. All right. Okay. You know what? We'll go with this one. The feeling of being touched by otherness in the context of internal and external relationships is central to both the analytic encounter and authentic religious life. Whether in analysis or religious experience, the recognition of the other entails a decentering of the self, the simultaneous destruction and creation of subjectivities that relativizes the strictly personal in the context of a larger, more encompassing reality.
Wow.
Whose words were those?
I'm not sure.
Were those Fromm's?
No, it's not from. No. I sent that to you?
You sent that to me.
Okay. I'm going to go back to it.
Maybe.
Yes.
Hegel?
I'm looking at it right now. No, it wasn't Hegel.
It was Novakoff.
I don't remember who it was.
It was Novakoff.
No, definitely not. He's not that smart.
The feeling of being touched by otherness.
Mm-hmm.
In the context of I'm just going to read it again. In the context of internal and external relationships is central to both the analytic encounter and authentic religious life. What does that sentence mean?
Well, the feeling of being touched by otherness in the context of internal and external relationships. Essentially, it is our. You know what you should do? You should read the other one I sent you, the one from Paul Ricoeur.
Okay. Which one's that?
I think that'll explain it a lot better. I'll read it.
You read it.
Okay. So this is from the philosopher Paul Ricoeur. He says, the way we become subjects is the same in psychoanalytic terms as in spiritual terms. We seek to satisfy desire, but in the move towards satisfaction, self-consciousness experiences the independence of the object. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to explain that.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Let's break that down. Think of the baby, the primal scene, baby on the breast, right? The baby might not understand in its earliest developmental stage that the mother the breast, is not a part of the baby.
Mm.
The baby has to come into some sort of realization that the object, the mother, is not a part
right.
of the self, that the object is an other, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read on. The same kind of intersubjective awakening occurs in the struggle for recognition, which according to Hegel is the spiritual phenomenon par excellence. The two interpretive discourses of psychoanalysis and religion therefore intersect at the point of recognition, the spiritual struggle for recognition by and of the sacred other entails the kind of wounding that is akin to the intersubjective emergence of the ego. When we experience ourselves as recognized by the other, whether the other is God or another person, so on, we must endure the wound of realization that the other is not us. We become a self, but a wounded self.
Oof.
That's Paul Ricoeur.
Who is that? Who is he? Again?
Paul Ricoeur is a 20th century French philosopher who was a phenomenologist, and he merged phenomenology and hermeneutics together. And obviously he's pulling from Hegel. And I think it brings, I'm looking at the quote again. I think it really brings together the two domains, the religious domain, the spiritual domain, and the psychological domain, in the sense that what is the primal struggle? The struggle is for recognition by the other. Recognition by the other gives the subject, the self, a sense of I am, right? I am.
You're saying it's the, what does recognition mean? Like, does it mean that the patient themselves are recognizing it within them, or is that the analyst is recognizing, or is it mirroring it for the patient? Or
recognition, I would describe as like a deep sense of awe that one subject has for another subject.
What's awe?
We're moving into your domain, Rabbi.
Yeah, there's a certain beauty here, and do you find that your patients?
I think what recognition happens in that deep, deep moment where one subject feels felt and seen, deeply felt and seen by another subject.
Mm-hmm.
It is that sense, it is that deep sense of I and thou.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this really happens when one subject can really surrender to another subject.
Mm. What do you mean by surrender?
Surrender in the sense that when you think of two-ness, right? You have a dyad, you think of two-ness, right? And Jessica Benjamin, famous psychoanalyst, she talks about two-ness in the sense of a sadomasochistic dynamic where take the two of us, right? Where we're inevitably going to do things to each other. We're going to set up a dynamic of do and done to, right? Inevitably that's going to happen. There is this other space, and Jessica Benjamin calls it the third. There's this other space, the third, where it's a space outside of the do or done to dynamic. It's that space where we could really, really see each other. where we're not doing things to each other anymore, where we surrender to each other. It's where something creative and alive really happens between two subjects.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that feels contrary to like to how like the rest of society is built. Like the
well, sure. I mean, you talk about you know, presidential press conferences and things like that. I mean, it's so much of a do or done to dynamic.
Right. It's like buy, sell, like what's the personal gain? It's like a different type of way.
One person is doing something to another person. Sales is predicated on that dynamic. Right? Do or done to.
Yeah.
So this notion of a third where two subjects can surrender.
And is your claim that the analyst is also surrendering as the patient is spilling their heart and soul and guts?
Well, the analyst also has to step out of the do or done to dynamic. The analyst also has to enter the third. So yes.
Yeah. What does that look like for you in broad strokes?
What does that look like? That's a
right,
great
because
question.
certainly you're there in the room and you have your own, you know, I don't know, distractions or reactions, or I don't know, maybe even sometimes maybe it's petty, what the things that you hear, maybe you might feel them as petty sometimes, or
yeah, we have our own stuff.
Yeah.
We have, you know, the countertransference. We bring our own stuff into the room.
Yeah.
And so, you know, on a very subtle level, you know, the therapist can equally be doing something to the patient, can be hovering power over the patient, can feel slighted by the patient. You know, the analyst is a real person. And so the analyst too has to find a creative way. Ultimately, this is where good therapy takes place, to step out of that dynamic. We're asking our patients to step out of that dynamic in their lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're helping our patients work on ways to step out of that do or done to dynamic. We're helping patients to create that third in their lives. So no better than to have it modeled in the analytic situation, in the consulting room. Here's a quote by Emmanuel Gent, another psychoanalyst. Please. He says, "The real longing for surrender in the presence of something or someone who so totally transcends our experience, whose presence is so total and affirming that we will take a chance on surrendering." He's saying that inherently our desire is for this type of surrender, to stop the struggle, to stop the do or done to. We want to surrender. We want to find something bigger, meaningful, more meaningful.
But what happens? We get in our way, or what happens? Why is that so hard?
We have an ego.
We have an
ego. And you know, we have a self, and that self demands of us that we work pretty damn hard to defend it.
At all possible costs.
To maintain its life, to maintain its vitality. I mean, let's face it, we live in a do or done to world that one needs to survive. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why this is what we're describing is a mutual process. It's something that that two-ness turns into a third.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It can't just happen. One person surrendering to another person is just the do or done to dynamic.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
What 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 impels someone to, like yourself, forget the patient for a moment, what impels someone like yourself to step into this type of like harrowing, demanding work practice?
Well, I had a very transformative experience in therapy myself in my early 20s, which dropped the seed.
Did you say drop the seeds?
Which dropped the seed
Yeah.
That was only later germinated in my 30s of wanting to do the work myself.
Mm-hmm. You seem to be talking about the work though in a way that makes it seem that it's ongoing. That like there's
Yeah,
your 40s
sure.
are gonna give you a different type of illumination. Maybe your 50s, like it seems to be an ongoing process.
Absolutely. I don't think it'll ever end. I mean, I personally plan on being in therapy myself, not only as a facilitator, but also as a participant for the rest of my life.
But like, isn't there a pill, doctor, that I can just take that'll make the anxiety and rage and resentment go away?
Sure.
Great.
Yeah, the pill is the consulting room.
The consulting room.
It's working it out with another human being. That's the pill. And it's not necessarily going to make anything go away. But it might get you through the hour, it might get you through the day.
Are you finding that,
And there are,
sorry.
go on. No,
You.
No.
I was going to ask us something else.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you already mentioned that you mentioned the struggle of being behind a screen now.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are you finding in your work now that there are like added layers of struggle given our current pandemic?
Yeah, for sure.
What's
I mean, the world as we know it has been turned upside down. Things that people can depend upon, jobs, economy, social life, have all been upended. Uncertainty is the rule of the game right now. Nothing is for certain. So people are really struggling with that. I'm struggling with that.
Yeah.
Who isn't struggling with that?
Yeah.
It's something I think that really affirms our humanity.
Uncertainty.
No, the fact that we're all going through it together. And yes, uncertainty also affirms our humanity as well, because it's something that is inevitable for everyone.
Yeah.
What's been of real interest to me lately is
what's that?
The nature of one's spirituality given the pandemic. Right? You're probably familiar with the term spiritual bypassing.
I don't know. No, I don't think I am. What is spiritual bypassing?
Spiritual bypassing is when one uses spirituality to evade needed psychological work.
Yeah. Like
spiritual bypassing, under non-pandemic circumstances, is a phenomenon writ large. What happens though once?
Wait, hold on. Can you give us like an example in non-pandemic times of spiritual bypassing?
Yeah, a person's has feelings of anger and rage, and those are just absolutely unacceptable feelings for the person, for that particular person to have, right? That person believes that they have to be enmeshed in the positive at all times.
I got it. What's another example?
I'm trying to think.
Like everything is for the best.
Everything is for the best. That's a great example.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No matter like all the terrible things that might happen to me or my loved ones, I'm gonna like hold on
Sure.
to everything is ultimately for the best.
Yeah. I mean, seeing spirituality as an area of experience that inevitably fosters joy, peace, love, intuition, so on and so forth. You know, when we set it up uncritically,
right,
as a moral good,
Mm.
we run the risk of diminishing its power
Mm.
as a morally neutral force in the human person in society.
You're saying spirituality is a bit like it can be used latov ulara for both good, for both sides of the coin.
Yeah, it's neutral, you know?
Yeah.
Spiritual experience, it's not pure. It's experienced through the bodies and psyches of flawed, conditioned, and fallible individuals.
Yeah. Okay, so now you were starting to say during COVID, you're seeing that more or you're seeing that less? Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing that challenge in a good way. I'm seeing spiritual bypassing, the tendency to bypass needed psychological work. I'm seeing that challenged, and I think that's actually a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning people are forced to come into closer contact with their own vulnerabilities and the vulnerabilities of those that they love.
Mm. Because there's just not as much distraction available.
There's not as much distraction available. There's not an adequate, there's nowhere to hide.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nowhere to hide except underneath a good mask.
Underneath a good mask, yeah.
You know, so the real danger is of spirituality becoming an instrument of dissociation. Needing to split off parts of ourselves that feel alien, frightening, repulsive. You know, essentially the damaged parts of the self are the illusion, and what is real is restricted only to positive feelings.
Mm. You it seems like you give your patients a tall order, man. This work of living an integrated existence of.
That's not a prescription.
That's not a prescription.
That's not a prescription. No.
What is that then?
You know, it's a hope for all of us.
It's a hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hope for all of us.
I'm curious though about this because you know I feel like, and you tell me when this crosses into the realm of spiritual bypassing, right?
Sure.
Let's say I'm thinking of the turmoil or struggle that my own ancestors went through, right? Whether through the Holocaust or their own, their own episodes of darkness, and compare. And when I, I know there's maybe a pause to compare and despair, but I guess maybe that's where the line is, right? Like, where's the line of being able to look at those stories or those episodes and draw strength or nourishment from them versus belittling our own current experience. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Not really.
Not 100%.
Yeah, it's fair. I guess I'm wondering, like, let's say, and maybe this isn't spiritual bypassing, maybe this is just something else, but let's say like I know that my grandparents in their struggles experience much worse than what I'm experiencing now,
Sure.
just from their day.
So are you telling me you're not allowed to feel the pain and suffering in your own life because your ancestors went through much worse?
If I were saying that, that would be spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
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 Now, it wouldn't be a bad thing for you to keep your suffering in some context, you know,
Right.
as a motivating factor. Like, you know, my ancestors have been through much worse.
Right.
I come from a real tradition of strength and courage. I'm going to draw upon that to deal with what I have to deal with. Sure, like that would be healthy. But when you say I have no right to feel what I'm feeling because my ancestors have gone through worse, then you're not feeling your own pain.
All right, but let's say not my ancestors. Let's say, you know, the people down the block who don't have the access to healthcare and services that I do because of my own privilege. Like,
okay, so what are you going to do about it? So the people down the street are suffering. So you're not entitled to any of your own suffering?
I mean, I'm coming to my analyst and I'm saying I feel like a hypocrite for. I guess that's what I'm doing.
Well, I'd say get your ass down to the end of the street and be of service. And right now, let's deal with your pain.
Fair. Nicely done. But, yeah.
Let's do both.
Let's do both. Is that? Yeah. Yeah. Let's both be of service and acknowledge and hold and feel the pain or whatever it is that you may be feeling in the moment.
It's tending to both pains. It's tending to their pain, to the one you feel that is suffering greater than you.
Yeah.
And it's also tending to your own pain. It's having a very big heart.
Maybe that's why.
Not just a heart for somebody else's suffering, or not just a heart for your own suffering.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe
I'm thinking of a David Hartman image of a heart with many rooms.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's an idea in the Gemara, in the Talmud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What does it say?
That to make your heart into a hall of many rooms, so that you can have both. You can have dissonant voices dwell there, competing voices dwell there.
I mean,
I was going to say maybe that is why you got into this line of work. You have an expansive heart.
That's sweet of you. Thank you. I hope so.
I think you got it to a certain extent. Let me ask.
Is that why you got it? Is that why you got into the rabbinate?
Is why because I have a heart. I have a
heart with many rooms.
A heart with many rooms. I think that's certainly part of it. Mm-hmm. I think about I make the choice to go into the rabbinate every day. You know, or I try to make that choice. Sometimes don't, but yeah. You know, Mo.
What are you thinking?
That I think like you are rather comfortable dwelling in silence. And I wonder what that experience is like for whoever is listening or watching.
To sit in silence with us?
well, no, sort of to watch other people sit in silence. Like you
Mm,
you sign on to watch something,
yeah,
presumably, like an exchange of ideas. Maybe it's an exchange of ideas or feelings, and then silence overtakes the moment.
is that where we are? Are we silent now?
I think I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. L'chaim. L'chaim. Can I ask you
Yeah,
what's are you finding any like glimmers of hope?
for sure. Yeah.
That's the Facebook Live answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm really hopeful. If it wasn't for this particular situation, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And so many other people who are doing really holy things right now wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Whether it's SNL or you name it concert or you name it fundraiser. Yeah, people are really showing up for each other. People are really showing up for each other without showing up. And it's pretty amazing.
Without the like do and be done type of dynamic you were talking about a little bit before.
Yeah, people are meeting in the third.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
Well,
and I think, and my hope is that it will carry over. My hope is that some of the dysfunctional systems that were so pervasive in our society will be challenged once we move out of this situation. Like healthcare and other aspects of the safety net.
yeah.
I'm hoping that people will say the go, do or done to economy does not work. It's unsustainable. It's so fragile. All something has to do is come along and put the economy and the world to a halt.
Yeah.
And everything falls apart.
I often feel this sense of awe whenever I'm by the ocean. Of just how powerful like the waves are, and how they can like take over, like potential, just depending how far along into the waters you allow yourself to go, you will eventually succumb. Like your own human powers will not withstand. Doesn't matter if you're 45 or Lady Gaga, like the waters will overpower you. Surrender. Yeah.
Well, will you surrender to it?
Will I?
Will you fight and kick and scream and?
Yeah.
But anyways, you're saying, yeah.
No, I'm well. I mean, it seems like it takes a global pandemic for us, much of the world, to reach that moment. And I think there's something tragic about that. I don't know.
Think about the pandemic of one's life, right? Having a depressive episode or losing somebody that you love, and how one can really draw great strength from that afterwards. How that can inform so much of a person's sensibility being in the world after something like that happens. The sensitivity that's created.
I hope you're right that we can nourish and nurture and harness that all of that that's being experienced. And I think you're right that it is being experienced now and cultivated and people are witnessing that. I really hope you're right about that.
Do you disagree?
It's a hope. It's a hope. I mean, the cynical or pessimistic part of me says it will last for a certain period of time until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. And then something else will come around.
And then something else will come around.
And rip off the Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And draw attention to the wound.
Yeah.
And new sensitivities will be created.
Right.
That's why we live in a world of suffering. It's to sensitize us. It's the only meaning I can make out of it.
What does that mean?
To give purpose and reason to suffering. I'm saying to try to look at it from a I'm saying that it sensitizes us to other people, to our own suffering, to our own selves, and to other people. The pathways through suffering.
Yeah. It's to bring us into that third space. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense why people would not want to.
Sure.
Build up.
Who wants to deal with their own pain and suffering?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that there's a story that that's in my family lore of my great grandfather, who was a Melamed, a Judaic studies teacher in out in Warsaw, originally outside of Warsaw, in a shtetl called Pruszewicz. But I think it was that he was on a cattle cart to Treblinka where he hung himself, saying something like, "Ze velmi nicht nemen a lebedik," and they won't take me alive.
Your great grandfather.
My great grandfather. A story that I don't know how I know that story either, but I think I think about that sense of not, I mean, that's right. In today's day and age, we say suicide, we say it's like a type of disease, right? To think that despair is the only, that's the only option. Because as you said, who wants to actually face their despair and suffering in the mirror?
Sure. You said he was on the way to Treblinka.
I think so. I think or one of the death camps. I only recently
that feels a little different to me than not wanting to deal with one's own pain and suffering.
Certainly. And that which he said, right, that they won't take me alive, if that is what he said, implies a certain type of spiritual resistance. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah. Don't you need to know suffering, though, in order to revel in joy or in pleasure?
I don't think you need to know suffering in order to experience joy. I think you will inevitably know suffering, and hopefully, despite that, will still experience joy.
Hazorim bedima berina yiksoru. Those who sow in tears will
reap in joy.
Will reap in joy.
Yeah.
Shlomo Carlebach says though that real spiritual toilers, real Hasidim, they translate that a bit differently. It's Hazorim bedima berina, those who sow in tears and in joy. Yiksoru, they'll reap that which they'll reap, but it's part of the same coin, the despair and the joy, the hope and the hopelessness.
What was that quote that you shared with me maybe a week ago, with that Rabbi Nachman said something about being distant and being near?
Yeah, it's in Hitchaskut HaNefesh, the strengthening of the soul, which is compiled by Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Nachman's student, but the teachings are attributed to Rabbi Nachman, where he says, Kol hitrachkuti hitkarvut, all distance is closeness.
All distance is closeness. What do you make of that?
He says all distance, and distance is in the service of closeness, you know.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I jam off of that. I really dig that. Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, we started out talking about like what's in the room. What do you know? What do you come into the space claiming to know? And that sort of turns it on its head, right? Like,
yes.
I think it's also compelling for times like ours, where we're forced to be physically distant from each other. But in many ways are feeling, you know, the need or indeed coming closer together in different types of ways, you know, emotionally, socially, spiritually. Distance is closeness. It's relative, I guess, you know. It's just
people reaching out to you?
In what sense?
I'd say congregants, but you don't really have congregants. Are basers and other lay people reaching out to you, seeking solace in this time?
Certainly. Yeah. I think the isolation that we're all feeling is severe, and people are encountering that. I mean, people are losing loved ones to it too, you know. Had basers.
I think you mentioned you did a funeral.
I officiated a funeral for a family friend who passed away, and we've had basers in the community whose parents have also fallen victim to this pandemic.
Terrible.
It's terrible. It's what's especially the crummy icing on the cake is that they're also not able to then mourn and grieve with people, which is like so paramount in our tradition. Such a featured part of what it is to grieve, you know, to mourn. Community. So being deprived of that, I mean, there are virtual, there are options, right? You have Zoom Shivas and things like that, but
now you know how I feel about doing therapy behind the screen.
Whoa, nicely done, Rabbi. Nicely done.
I really feel so deeply for those people. And what a service you're doing by being there for them and being there with them.
Trying, man. Trying to.
And think about it. What do you know when they come to you? They come to you, I'm so lonely. I'm hurting so deeply. What do you know?
Yeah.
You know your own suffering
Yeah.
because you're going through it too,
Right.
right?
For sure.
You might be the rabbi, but that's pretty egalitarian as far as I'm concerned.
Mm. Well, I think it depends to what extent the rabbi allows herself to feel that, to feel their own, or to compartmentalize and say, now I shall officiate,
Uh-huh.
you know?
Well, you would be doing the ones you officiate for a deep disservice if you didn't officiate from your own pain.
I agree. Dude, you've had some strong lines tonight. Very strong. Yeah, man.
Thanks, Rabbi.
To officiate from one's own pain.
Officiate from your pain. Yeah. Right. That's what the therapist does. That's what the rabbi hopefully does. Right. And it's so interesting because when I speak about this egalitarian nature of the dyad, I mean, in a different circumstance, under different conditions, the therapist could be the patient and the patient could be the therapist.
Right.
It's just a matter of training. It's a matter of training. It's a matter of clinical experience. But ideally, we could live in a world where we just switch places. We don't live in that world.
Right. Boundaries and all.
Yeah. Yeah. But it just so could be, you know?
Right.
My therapist, he could have come to me for therapy. It just so happened that the world was designed where I went to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you make of that?
It's beautiful. It means we have so much to offer each other.
We
have roles. Yeah, we need each other. We have roles to play, and that's a good thing. And like you said, boundaries and the such.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think working from that frame, whether you're a rabbi or a therapist, it's a real way to dignify the person that you work, the person or people that you work with.
It's honest. Yeah.
It's honest. It's real.
Yeah.
That if we were in a different world, I could be the rabbi and you could be the therapist. When you work with somebody as a rabbi and you know that,
yeah,
that, you know, different circumstances, they could be the rabbi. It changes how you look at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully you'll look at them and work with them with humility, really dignifying who they are and what they're coming with.
Amen.
Yeah.
This has been a rather reflective episode of a rabbi and a psychoanalyst walk into a Zoom.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll walk into a room. But until then.
Until we meet again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Nice conversation.
Love you.
Love you too.
Stay sanitized.
You too, my friend.